Today I'm going to be looking at a line graph with a single data set. Okay, so here's our chart, Tabard Towers theme park. We have thousands of visitors per month. We don't know the year, it's not important, so we're just dealing with the months here. What's important to keep in mind is what the axis is telling us, thousands of visitors. So our data set is not describing the visitors, it's describing the number of visitors. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, let's have a look at this candidate's introduction and overview. Okay, so here is our introduction and here is our overview. The graph illustrates the number of visitors in thousands visited the Tabard Towers theme park throughout the whole year, which is counted per month. Overall, this park has an interesting variation, which includes an erratic fluctuation in the middle year and gradual pattern in several first and last months. Okay, here's what I have to say about this. Okay, so the introduction uses a pretty standard opening line. The graph illustrates blah, 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 blah. Now, here we see that the topic is number of visitors. Okay, let's keep that in mind. I'll return to this in just a second. But now here we need a relative pronoun because it's the number of visitors who visited the Tabard Towers theme park. And since we're not specifying which year it is, we shouldn't be saying the whole year. It's just a whole year. And here we have the verb counted, which is counted per month. I don't think the year is counted in 2 months at all. We could say the year is divided into, but do we even need to really say that? If you really want to refer to the months, you could say which is divided into months, but a year is not counted per month. Maybe you could say counted in months, but even that is unnecessary. So if you want to, if you really feel the need to refer to the months, I would suggest you say divided into months. Otherwise, just leave it out. Now, overall, this park has an interesting variation. You see, here's the problem. The line shows the number of visitors. The line doesn't show how the park has had interesting variations. The park pretty much stays the same, well, presumably, stays the same throughout the whole year. It's not the park that changes, it's the number of visitors. That's why it's so important that we accurately identify what the data set is referring to. So this refers to incorrect data. The park didn't vary at all. Well, at least we don't know that. That's not what the chart is saying. Which includes an erratic fluctuation in the middle year. Well, there's only 1 year. So what is the middle year? So it's in the middle of the year. In the middle of the year. Now, pattern is a countable noun, so we need the article a gradual pattern. Now here we have several first and last months. I'm not entirely sure what the author is referring to. Is this the gradual pattern? Is this the gradual pattern? Because to me this doesn't look gradual, it's a pretty steep drop. And is this gradual? Well, perhaps. But I don't think that pattern is the right word, because this is an increase, this is a decrease. So if we're talking about increases and decreases, we should use the word increase and decrease. Unless you want to say gradual changes. Changes might be a better word. But then we shouldn't have because those will be plural. So if we go with changes, then we don't need there. gradual changes in several is not the right word to use here. So we could say the first few and last months. So first, last, not several. But again, I'm trying to guess what the writer is trying to say. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so here is our body. You'll notice it's one single paragraph, which is a problem. But let's look at the topic sentence. It says the Tabor Towers theme park has a gradual increase of visitors since the beginning of the year until May from 30,000 to 70,000 visitors. So just remember, your topic sentence of your paragraph tells the reader what the topic of the whole paragraph is going to be about. So if this is about the increase since the beginning of the year until May, then in the rest of the paragraph we are going to expect to read about the increase from the beginning till May. Later, the visitors number went up and down wildly with an upward trend towards the end of the year. In June, it has more than 50% sharp drop to 20,000 visitors before shooting up to hit 120,000 mark in the next month, almost doubled the visitors 2 months ago. The park's visitor fell back to slightly under 80,000 in August and bounced back to almost 140,000 visitors in September. After that, it plummeted down periodically to 80,000 visitors in December, where it reached over 250% visitors since January. Okay, so a couple of things to consider. What you need to do is group the significant features. Group significant features, because the task always says summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. Selecting and reporting the main features. So that means you need to identify what the significant features are. But then it continues to say make comparisons where relevant. Now, how are you going to compare the features if you don't group them? Grouping the features means dividing them into two. If you have just a single long paragraph, let me see, this doesn't fit on the screen now. If we just have a single long paragraph, we are not grouping anything. And it's very difficult to see what the main features are, because this paragraph makes us believe that we are going to read about the first half of the chart, but then actually it continues to talk about the whole chart. So what do you do if you have a line chart with a single data set? Like here in our example, we just have one line. If there are two lines, well, that's pretty easy. You just compare one line with the other one. But if there's only one line, what do you do then? Well, the easiest thing to do is just to divide it into two. So we can take the first 6 months and we can write about the first 6 months in our first paragraph, and then we can move on and write about the second 6 month period, and that is going to be the topic of the second paragraph. So take the year, divide it in two. The first half is going to be the topic you write about in your first paragraph, and then you compare the first half of a chart with the second half of the chart. So if we had done that, we would have seen during the first half there was an increase followed by a decline, and in the second half it reached new highs, and overall there's a growth from let's say about 35,000 to 80,000. But the second half saw a much greater rise than the first half. I wouldn't say there were bigger declines. This decline and this decline is maybe the same, although here this decline is quite big. So the decline in the second half is bigger than the decline in the first half, but the rise in the second half is greater than the rise in the first half. So that would be a way of describing and comparing the data if you just have one line in a line chart. So there's a problem that all the data is described in one paragraph, but let's look at the one paragraph anyway. So this long noun phrase is repeated. That is not necessary. We already referred to the Tabard Tower theme park in the introduction, so we don't need to repeat the name. Since there's only one data description, it's not easy to get confused. So why don't we just say there, and that's it. Or we can refer to it when we refer to the numbers, but we don't need to use this whole long name again. Now, for the tenses, sometimes the writer uses, I don't know, here maybe they should have used the present perfect, but instead they used the present tense, and then here they used the past tense, and then here the present tense. Here it looks like they tried to use the past tense, past tense, past tense. So it's kind of inconsistent. So it doesn't really matter if you use the present tense or the past tense. Just be consistent. If you start using the present tense, stick with the present tense. If you start using the past tense, use the past tense throughout. Okay, so here they use since. Since should be used with the present perfect tense. The auxiliary verb has is not the main verb. So if you really want to use since, it should be has had. But it would be better just to use the word from instead of since. So why don't we say it had a gradual increase, and then this of needs to be changed. Let me cross this out. This of needs to be changed to in. It's had an increase in visitors. Increase is used with the preposition in. From the beginning of the year until May, from 30,000 to 70,000. Now here the writer says later, but when is later? Is later after May? If it's after May, then specifically when? So why not just use June instead of later? The visitor, there should be no S here. So if you are using the word number with another noun, and this noun is countable, then there should be no S there. So the visitor numbers, there should be an S there though, went up and down wildly. I would suggest not using the phrase up and down wildly. I know that in the introduction the writer already used the word fluctuated, but we can use a variation of the word fluctuated. So why don't we say something like showed some fluctuation instead of went up and down wildly. So let's change that to showed some fluctuation. Or if you don't want to use the word showed, maybe you can use the word experienced with an upward trend towards the end of the year. Okay, in June it has. So here they use the present tense. I don't know why. Just be consistent. So past tense, past tense. So let's change this to past tense. Now the sharp drops are countable, so we're going to need an article. So a more than 50% sharp drop before shooting up to hit the. I do like the fact that they use the word mark, but we do need the article the. So hit the 120,000 mark. Now here they use doubled as a verb, but I think they want to use it as an adjective instead of a verb. So almost double the visitors 2 months before. They said ago. Ago is not the right word. When we use ago, we mean before now. So for example, today is, what is today? Today is May 21st. So 2 months ago would be March 21st. But you are talking about a period before another period in the past. So don't use the word ago, use the word before. Ago is just used starting from now. The number of park, so we don't need this here. We don't need this apostrophe S. We do need an S with the visitors because they are, well, plural, more than one visitor. And here again, we need to be consistent with the tenses. Bounce back. I do like the phrase bounce back, but just let's keep the tense consistent. Now here they wrote plummeted down. Well, to plummet means to fall down sharply. So we don't need the down, that's redundant. Plummeted down periodically to 80,000 visitors in December. So they're saying between September and December, there were periodical falls. September. But if I look at this from September to December, it's not periodical, because periodical would be like now and again, not always. But if I look at this, there is a decline in every month. So periodical is not the right word to be using here. If you want to use periodical, you could say between May and, what is this? Let's say between May and September, there were periodical declines, because there's a decline here and a decline here, but it doesn't always decline. So if it doesn't always decline, then the decline is periodical. But it's not this, you shouldn't be using this word, because there was a continuous decline, which is the opposite of periodical. What did I just do now? And then maybe at the end here, originally the writer wrote where it reaches, again present tense, over 250% visitors since January. This is a very confusing phrase. I mean, it's not that confusing. I do understand what they're trying to say, but it's not exactly clear. So my suggestion would be, instead of this, let's use this participial phrase here, ending the year with a 250% increase over the January number, because it refers to the number. So we are talking about two things, the plummeting and the ending the year, two things that happen to the same subject, one after another. So then with our second verb, we can add the ing, just like the writer did. Oh, here he said it had a more than 50% sharp drop to 20,000 visitors before shooting up. So this second verb, which also happened to the same subject, here's the first verb. So the second verb takes this ing, and here we can do the same thing. Ending the year with a 250% increase, because increases are countable, so we need the article there, over the January number. Okay, but actually this was just the first version, and I'm going to be looking at the second version in just a second.